That's good. That's good. So I've started my recording, which means you guys can start your recording because I sync everything off my recording. 8, 6, 9, 3, go. Sweet. That's legit.
I'm recording.
Sweet. Most of this beginning stuff's gonna get cut out anyway. Or
Yeah, please do.
Spaghetti stuff?
All the spaghetti stuff's gonna get
All
cut
the
out
spaghetti
anyway.
stuff.
But it's still gonna be spaghetti, right?
Yeah, it's still gonna be spaghetti. You guys have like 30 seconds, then I'll start the podcast.
Thank you, I got that out just in time.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh no, there's more. Oh god. Oh shit. Oh, okay, we're good.
I might just cold start with all of that.
Hey, you cut that out. No.
I'll do what I want. Alright, so, you guys ready? Alright, here goes. I had to do it too. Welcome everybody to Ziggy and Pyrin play Pokemon Soul Silver, but not quite because it's a podcast episode, because of the nature of this episode, and you'll see that it's like an extra, 60 minutes long. Anyway, today we're joined by my good buddy Ari. Hello, say hi, so people know what your voice sounds like.
Can
Ari.
you address me? Can you address me as something else?
You want me to restart and address you as something else?
No, you can keep going. I mean, it's already out there, but I'd prefer to be known as Night Dragon, my gamer handle, for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm not gonna call you Night Dragon. I'm sorry, Ari, but it's just gonna be the way it is. So we're gonna do a little bit different today. We're just gonna go over some questions and talk for like as long as we possibly can, so that this episode isn't the most boring shit that you've ever seen. Anyway, to start it all off, oh yeah, and Pyrin's here too. Pyrin, you want to say hi? Okay, so you can hear what his voice sounds like too. We don't have face cams. We're gonna just
my voice.
yeah. If you've been watching the series and for some reason are not jumping in on episode 21, you should know his voice by this point. We're just gonna start with the first question. So my first question that I have here is, what games have you guys been playing so recently?
I got the shit stick. Silas, you go.
Alright. I've been playing a lot of the Binding of Isaac Rebirth. It's a really good game for me to just sit down with and just play. I was gonna say inconsequentially, but I don't know if that's really the right word. It's just easy to just sit and play, and if you have to stop, then you can just stop and come back to it later. Or you can sit and play for an hour, or you can sit and play for freaking ever.
Yeah.
So I've been playing, I've been playing a lot of Rebirth. I just recently got City Skylines, which I like for a lot of reasons, and I know a lot of people like it. And I'm not a huge like city builder game guy, but I enjoy it for what it is. And I've been getting back into playing a little bit of Team Fortress 2. And other than that, recently in the last couple weeks, when I get time, I'm just kind of looking around and trying to find some more fun things. I like finding whatever I can, whether or not it's actually like a known title.
Right, makes sense. So like, what do you? I don't know what your experience with City Skylines is at all. But I know that it's more like simmy. Then I guess it's not more simmy. They have like a free play mode, right? So you've been playing like the free play, like unlimited money, or are you like trying to build the city from like nothing?
I started like in the normal mode for a little bit, and then I just got so frustrated, and I was like, "Fuck this!" So I went to like everything is free because I don't really care. You know what I mean? Like I could sit and wait and try and figure out how to make it like have a functioning economy. But I don't know anything about that, and I would just walk away from it. So I like the sandboxy version, or the sandboxy atmosphere. That's not the right word, but I like being able to just kind of fuck around with it. And like you still have to make it function. You know what I mean? Like you're not just like, oh, I'm gonna build this fucking skyscraper 11,000 feet tall. Like it's still a city, and you still have to maintain the things and make sure that everything's working together. And
Right.
it's fun enough. Like I don't know. Those kinds of games are interesting because, like, I find it somewhere between, like, in terms of my enjoyment, what I get out of it, I think I find it somewhere between like playing an RTS that I really enjoy and like Civilization, where I know a lot of people like Civilization, and I recognize that it's good for what it is in all of its like aspects. But whenever I've played Civ, I just kind of find myself playing for like 4 hours and the entire time just being like, I don't care about what I'm doing. Like it just doesn't. I don't know.
You lose a lot of time playing Civ, for sure.
Yeah, and
like it's yeah.
Yeah, Civ drains you. I tried to play a multiplayer round once with like 7 people, and we made it about an hour in before I started falling asleep.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. Like back when I played Civ a little bit more, I think Civ 4, which I'm sure a lot of people are like, why do you play Civ 4 of all the Civs? But that's just where I jumped in, and people were like, yo, you want to play some multiplayer games? And it was back when I had like online friends, and so I was like, sure. And then you'd sit down, and the game would go, and the game would go, and like basically the 2 sets of friends I had were people who played League of Legends and people who played Civ. So any way that I sat down at the computer and people wanted to play games, I'm losing like 7 hours of my life to it.
Oh yeah.
It was really hard. It was just one of those things where if you get bored of it, you get bored of it, and then you have to wait another 5 hours before you can be done with it. But if you enjoy it, though, you know, that's like, it's meditative, I think, probably more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think I get that like meditative aspect from City Skylines more than from a game like Civ.
Right.
And I think that's just because like it's like, at least when you're playing in unlimited money mode, it's a lot less, I guess, strategy based. You know, like there's nothing else but what you want and what's in your brain.
Right.
And then in Civilization, it's like there are these other AIs that you're interacting with and responding to. And so it's a little bit more just like, I guess, like painting, or like, you know, just kind of like finger painting, except it's a city.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It would be nice if City Skylines had like a sweet multiplayer where it was someone built their city right next to your city and you tried to compete for people to live in it.
What would be nice would be if it wasn't horrifically expensive and I wasn't a frugal man.
Yeah, that's true. It is a pretty
but
pricey
it
game.
Looks really cool. I might get in on that.
Yeah, and apparently the modding community is super good, so there's a bunch of really, really nice mods out there that like make the game, like, I wouldn't say play easier, but it removes a lot of like the tedious stuff. I know for sure, like when a house burns down or becomes vacant, you have to like manually bulldoze it, which is a pain in the ass. But there's
manually bulldoze the house.
Yeah, you have to manually bulldoze the house as the mayor for some reason. And then,
I love it.
Yeah, and so they have mods where it's like it just automatically bulldozes it when the house is done, which makes sense. Or like stuff that gives skins to like different restaurants, so not every restaurant is like the same Burger King, like repeated 100 times. Yeah,
they have. I was thinking about that recently, and they have, for like a moderately sized town or city, they have a really good number of like I guess skins. But then like my city's a lot bigger now, so I was like looking at the big downtown part of it, and there are like 6 of the exact same skyscraper right next to each other.
Yeah. It's a design choice. But yeah, so they have a bunch of things that make the buildings look different and stuff, so that's cool.
That's cool.
There are a lot of really cool mods, and I guess first person is a thing too.
Yeah, they added a first person mode, so you can like go down on your city, like not go down, but go into the streets and go into the streets. I'm sorry, go into the streets and walk around and see everybody. And like
this is a family podcast.
It's a family podcast. Nothing unfamily about it. It's going over top of a Pokemon video. You know, we're not shooting people.
When you hear your family.
When you hear your family.
That's actually our slogan.
Yep.
Well
nobody else's slogan. We're not gonna get sued. It'll be fine. Anyway, Ari, what games have you been playing?
I've been playing a lot of the original Dark Souls. I finished Dark Souls 2 the other day and decided to go back and see how the first was. And the first thing I noticed was that it ran at about 40 FPS, which was jarring. And then I was going to go install the 60 FPS mod, but I really didn't want to put in the effort. But it's better. It's significantly better. I've been having a great time. Mm-hmm. I definitely didn't start my file sober, so the build I went for was ass naked with the Black Knight sword, because the Black Knight sword's kind of a baby weapon, but I'm compensating for that by being ass naked at all times.
Right.
I had an interesting incident where I knocked Knight Lautric off a cliff, lost the Fab Ring as it dropped down an enormous hole, but then I went online and some people had some tips and I managed to retrieve it, so my run's been going just dandy.
That's nice.
And on the side I've been playing some Space Station 13, which has just deteriorated into a massive gore fest. I've been banned from most servers, which will change next year when I have a new IP. And that's really sad because I don't get to play on some of my favorite servers, and my ban reasons for those aren't as griefy as some of my other ones. But I go on the Brazilian server. You know, usually I cut some Brazilian guy's head off, and then he screams at me in the out-of-character chat. But I've been having a great time, and if you took the time to learn how NetHack played or something, I'd definitely recommend that.
Yeah. A Space Station 13 is one of those games where it's like, if you were an outside, I wouldn't say an outsider, but somebody who's never heard of it before or never seen it, and then someone was like, hey, you should play Space Station 13 because there's like some really cool shit that goes on, and they're like, oh, cool, I'll Google it. And then it like,
and then you're abruptly disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. You're like,
Yeah.
oh. But like when you get into it, there's a bunch of really cool interactions that can go on. I played it with you for a little bit, I want to say last year. You know, we had like really like 4-hour-long play sessions, like multiple ones of those, and like even though I wasn't very good at it, a lot of interesting shit happens like within that small span of time. Yeah. And once you get the mechanics down better, even like more things. It's a game based on interactivity that doesn't look good it doesn't look as good because it has to compensate for all the things that can happen, right? Like if you tried to do all the visual stuff for all the things that happen in that game,
it would be a total disaster. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. In the same vein as like a Dwarf Fortress or something, or a NetHack, where if the game tried to visualize everything that happened as opposed to like writing it out to you.
Not only would your computer die, you'd die.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't be able to comprehend what's going on screen. It would be insane. So yeah, what was the first one? Dark Souls. I started playing Dark Souls again too.
It's great. There's nothing like it.
I was like, all right, I'm gonna stream yesterday. Hope that doesn't date the podcast. Maybe it does. Who cares? Streamed Dark Souls yesterday, and I did pretty shitty, but like going from Bloodborne to Dark Souls, and I noticed the 40 FPS thing too, and I thought it was my computer like just dying, like shitting itself. I was like, what's going on? Like, this computer should be able to run Dark Souls. That game is like 3 years old now. That was a little off, but it's so much fun, and I don't know, it's so much more patient, I think, than Bloodborne is, so I was doing really bad because I was just trying to be like more offensive than I should be. But yeah, Dark Souls is a fantastic thing to be going and playing, and if you haven't played it, you should probably play it, because although Dark Souls 2 is good, I think Dark Souls 2 is like a fantastic game. There's a lot of things that Dark Souls 1 does, I think more specifically environmentally, than Dark Souls 2, that makes it like really, really nice. So you did Space Station 3.
Played either of them.
Get on that, dude. This
come
so
on.
much fun.
Silas, come on.
Yeah.
No, man.
We expect more.
A lot of people are scared away by the fact that it's incredibly difficult. But it's fairly difficult, like difficult in a fair way. You know,
I'd say
like,
it's more of a spicy meatball than anything.
Right. Well, I mean, it's super difficult when you start playing it because you don't have a full grasp on how it works.
Right.
If that makes sense. But the more you play it, the more you understand the mechanics. Not the easier it gets, but the better you get. Which is,
right.
you know,
the easier it is to like comprehend what's happening and
and how you should approach situations and stuff like that. Which, you know, I think a lot of people have been like, when Dark Souls 2 came out, and I think Dark Souls 2 is probably legitimately a little bit easier than Dark Souls 1. They were like, what is this baby shit? And then you're like, well, hold on. You just spent like 20 hours, 30 hours playing through Dark Souls 1. You have a grasping, you have an understanding of how that works, and then they have to make a new game that people who've never played Dark Souls can approach.
So you're saying the returning players already had the skill set.
Yeah.
And, I feel like I kind of built my skill set in Dark Souls 2, though. For some reason, I came back to Dark Souls 1, and it was easier.
Well, yeah, and I think that's just because the games are so similar mechanically that any experience that you have in either of them is just going to help you build on both games, if that makes sense.
And if the second one is easier, then even though you'd played, a large amount of the first, you'd be building on that with an easier,
a less steep difficulty curve, I think. Right.
So you're just building onto it quickly.
Which I think is also the thing about Dark Souls 2 is that the difficulty curve was more evened out for people who were just starting to play the game. So, like, it wasn't as atrociously, like, ass-kicking at the very beginning of the game.
I'm going to drop a little, Oh, sorry. No, you can finish.
Oh, no, it's fine. Go ahead.
I'm going to drop a little music plug in here. For my pump music, for any game I'm playing, but especially Dark Souls right now, I've been using the most brilliant piece of music I know, which is the instrumental version of Gwen Stefani's Holla Back Girl. It's fantastic, and I'm not joking. This is not a joke. You really need to try it.
It's okay. I know. I feel you.
It's great. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
For that.
For that. For anything else, it would have been fine, but for that,
yeah.
No, it's totally fine. And I've definitely been experiencing it, and this is kind of into my side of the answer of this question. I've been playing a lot of Bloodborne, and it's been really apparent that jumping into Bloodborne after playing Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2 a lot, I put a lot of time into those games despite never getting actually very good at them. You start to notice the patterns and the things that they do, because Bloodborne is essentially just a Dark Souls game. If you haven't seen anything from it, it's a Dark Souls game with a few mechanic changes that kind of change the way the game feels a little bit, but for the most part, it's still a Dark Souls game. And, like, knowing when you think you're going to get ambushed and when it's a good idea to, like, bait out enemies from the position they're in as opposed to fighting them where they're at is a really huge thing that I think you start to learn probably later in your Dark Souls cycle than earlier. You know, like, you're like, oh, here's like 2 enemies, like I can easily take out 2 enemies, and you go to fight them and like 4 more come out from behind you and you just die. And so you learn, like, next time you just throw a rock or something at one of them so they'll come after you and you can just take them out one at a time. Yeah, so important things there.
Tactics.
Yeah, anything else besides Space Station 13 and Dark Souls?
Next up on my backlog, I'm either going to finish Deadly Premonition or I'm going to do Dead Space.
Ooh.
Because I need a good horror game. I also need to finish Alien Isolation, but I'm just not feeling it right now.
Yeah.
Deadly Premonition, for anybody who doesn't know about that, is sort of if a Japanese studio tried to make a direct ripoff of Twin Peaks as a sort of Resident Evil style game. And I mean, it is exactly that. The plot is a direct ripoff of Twin Peaks. You've got the detective who goes to the sleepy woodland town and talks into a recorder all the time and sees spooky things, but it's just much cheesier. And it's very enjoyable. I'm having a great time, except with the port, because it runs at 20 FPS at best.
Yeah.
And I've got a pretty good computer.
Yeah.
And you have to do something special with your controller if you want it to work at all. So it's a little bit of a hassle to play, but it's been cool.
Yeah.
Is it a new game?
No, it's old.
Oh yeah, it's probably 2007 or something.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was I don't remember. It must have been. I don't know if it was Chip, or if it was Chip and some other people. If it was them, but it was that group of Let's Players who were playing it, and they just know so much about it. But like, damn, that game is cheesy as hell in the best ways, though.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's like a spiritual successor to Darkseid.
Yeah. Isn't D4 supposed to be like really similar to that as well? I don't remember what D4 is.
D4?
Like.
I don't know what D4 is. Sorry.
It's like Dark Days Don't Die or something like that.
Oh, Dark Dreams Don't Die.
Dark Dreams Don't Die.
Yeah, I have no idea what it is, but I've heard the name.
Yeah, it's supposed to be something very similar to that, but intentionally, you know, which I think is kind of... Yeah. So I heard
cheapens the medium.
Exactly. So it was one of those things...
Of cheese that's acceptable.
Right. Well, and
also...
But, like, when you're doing something... So when you're making, like, a game or a movie, and I think this goes for all good, bad things, when your heart's in it, and you're just not good at it, there's something way special about that makes it way more endearing. Whereas if you're making something with the intent of it being bad, it typically doesn't end up having the good bad quality to it. It's just being like bad.
Black Dynamite is kind of an exception, but with everything else, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and then I think a good example, I just watched Samurai Cop not that long ago, and Samurai Cop is... And same with The Room. It's all like, similar things to that, but like where the director had, you know, a vision in mind that they really, really wanted, but, you know, they the application of it, it just didn't work out the way that they wanted to, and you get something really, really special and bad and great at the same time. What was the other one that you said? Besides before Deadly Premonition?
I said Dead Space, I think?
Dead Space and Alien Isolation, yeah.
Yeah. Similar games, I believe. I think Alien Isolation is probably better, but I haven't really played Dead Space yet, so I wouldn't know.
You haven't played a little bit of Dead Space.
Yeah, Dead Space.
I mean, I've played like 5 minutes of it, but
Dead Space is it's pretty good. It's like, I would say similar in the they went with the Resident Evil feel for controls and things like that, like Resident Evil 4. Which isn't a bad thing to do, and it's probably the best out of the series just because it's most genuinely close to the horror franchise as opposed to action.
Okay.
You know? So they focus more on being scary and then being like, oh, here you killing like zombies with like 100 different weapons kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, first Dead Space is pretty good. I also just recently bought Alien Isolation because it was like $12 or something.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. And so I did that. I want to play through it as well, but it's like 20-something hours long.
It's excessively long for what it is.
Yeah, exactly. It is excessively long for what it is.
Like, I got the flamethrower, I can kind of sort of assault the alien now, and I just feel like the game has been going on for too long.
Oh, yeah.
How long have you played it?
Let me check.
But I definitely... It's one that I want to play, and if I play it, I'll either play it with good company in not so, sober state of mind, or I'll be playing it on stream, one of the two. But I don't know how my computer will do with it, so...
I am 7 hours into the game, and I'm still on the damn ship.
Oh yeah, you're on the ship for like the entirety of the game, too.
It just doesn't end.
Yep.
But no, I like it. It's a little spooky.
Yeah,
it's spooky enough.
There's a lot of cool things going on in that game that make it interesting and make me want to play it despite knowing that it's going to go on for too long.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about a game that goes on for too long as opposed to one that goes on like isn't long enough is that you can stop when you want to stop, and a game that's too short, it's going to end before it feels satisfying. So stop when you're not happy about it, and then just let it be.
My dad is a theater director, and he's always said for like my whole life, and it's always funny thinking about this like later in my life, because my initial reaction is like, okay, whatever, Dad, but then there are times where I actually think about it and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But he always says that like 80% of art is knowing when to stop.
Oh yeah, no, it's
absolutely.
It's like a really, really valid point, and I think I don't want to say most, because I don't know if that's true, and I wouldn't be the best judge, I guess, but there are so many examples of pieces of art in our culture that have just gone way over that line.
Yeah, and I know I understand that the expression is kind of about like when to finish an individual piece, but I will throw it out there that Banksy needs to stop entirely. I think I would extend that advice to him.
Your art culture. I understand you're upset, Ari.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's all right. I'm just a little salty.
All right. So, Silas, you want to ask your question? Because you had one that you wanted to ask before we started, but...
Yeah. I don't know if I know a really good way to phrase it, and this is more story related, not necessarily just about games. But I was thinking about villains recently as characters, and I don't know how to phrase it as a question exactly, but it's just really interesting to me to think about the motivation of the villain, and I know that's been explored a lot in things like Wicked, or things like freaking that other one that just came out recently, right, where you see a story that you're familiar with from the viewpoint of the villain.
Gotcha.
But
Maleficent.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what it was.
And other things as well.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of interesting to at least just think about in certain stories, because Kiri and I were having a conversation about like Harry Potter, for instance, where the more I think about it, the more I feel like in the timeline of the story that we get, like Harry Potter's story in the books,
Right.
It seems like pretty much all Voldemort wants is for Harry Potter to die. Right? Like in the final book.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about spoilers anymore because it's been so long. You shouldn't care. So whatever. Like in the final book, there's that bit of time where Harry Potter like is dead, and he's just like, "I fucking won, everyone," and they stop fighting. Right?
Yeah.
And so then my brain goes like, okay, Harry Potter's character, like his morals, I feel like he would have just sacrificed himself long before that, knowing that so many people were going to get injured or die.
Oh, if he'd
You know
known
what I mean?
that was what was going to kill Voldemort?
Well, that's all he wanted.
Well, no, that's not all
know what I mean?
Voldemort
Like-
wanted. Harry Potter was Voldemort's only obstacle in the path to ethnic wizard cleansing. And I know that sounds like a joke, but no, he was a Hitler allegory. He was trying to remove the Half-Bloods from the wizarding world, and Harry Potter was the only obstacle to that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
I mean, it could have been more explicitly stated, but that's
Sure.
essentially what his goal was, and
Yeah, and I
Rowling's
understand.
talked about it.
Okay, yeah, that does make sense, and I understand too that, I think a good example is like something that's aimed for children. Like if there's a bad guy, there's a bad guy, and there are sometimes where you can only extend it to the point where it's like, well, he's just the bad guy.
Oh,
yeah. Because it's for kids, you can't get too deep on it.
No,
But,
I see what you're saying.
But what was another example? I feel like one of the stories that people gravitate to the most for villains is just like power. It's
Right.
simply power. It's like, whoa, you would really sacrifice everyone or all these people or whatever just to, be in control.
Yep.
And
Or shoot lasers from your hands or whatever.
yeah. And I have trouble finding a harder or better told story, and I think a lot of people would disagree with this, than the story of like Anakin in Star Wars.
Oh, yeah,
Because-
that's a weird one.
It's definitely a weird one, and I definitely don't agree with a lot of the newer trilogy at all. But the motivation of like, I don't know exactly how to phrase it. I don't know. Maybe we can come back to that. I think I'll have better thoughts on it.
All right. You just we'll let it sit, and then we'll come back. We'll re-rotate, or if you raise your hand if it comes back to you. Ari.
Yeah.
You have a question that you wanted to ask. You got the shit stick. Now's your chance to let it shine.
It's my time to let the shit stick shine.
Yeah, let it waft.
Damn, I wasn't ready for this. I thought we were. Oh, are we? Yeah. Okay, give me a second here.
Yeah, you're the third point in this triangle circle.
I am the question boy. All right. Just give me a second here. I gotta formulate my thoughts. Okay, formulating my thoughts. All right. So, a question I wanted to ask the group here is, why isn't Nintendo Power in business anymore? And what's it gonna take to bring the legend back to life and delivered to my doorstep on a monthly basis? How are we gonna make that happen? And why did it die in the first place?
That's a great question.
Oddly enough, I think that it died when, the idea of being able to access the information that was in a Nintendo Power just like online. So how it started with like the call centers?
Yeah.
And then you were like, okay, I can access the call centers, but it's really nice to have like a visual aid and all of the stuff that would happen in a Nintendo Power.
Yeah, you join the Nintendo Cool Kids Club or whatever it was called, and then you'd get the tips in that magazine, and that's how that started.
Right. And so, once the internet hit and message boards became a thing, I think that like less people were buying the game for the tips and like the hints on how to beat games, and we're just kind of looking it up, using the great Google machine. and figuring it out. And so I imagine that their sales probably just dropped in comparison to what they used to. Now, that being said, and knowing how Nintendo works, I wouldn't be surprised if they did a revival, or wouldn't be surprised, but I would be kind of surprised / I think it would be kind of successful if they just did a revival Nintendo Power and kept it equally as 90s as it was when it came out. I think that it would sell super, super well, though I don't know what they would put in it. Like, maybe just, like, kind of really obvious stuff or Easter eggs in new games. I don't know what you would... What content would you put in there?
Well, the coolest thing about mid-2000s Nintendo Power was that it was mostly reviews. Like, it would open with the reviews and it would close with the reviews. And I mean, they'd give, like, post-critiques of stuff they critiqued in the last magazine at the beginning, and then towards the end they do the new stuff. But all the critiques were, like, third-party game would get, like, a 4 or a 6.
Yeah.
And then a Nintendo game would get a 9 or a 10. And then, if the Nintendo game was, like, really bad, like just, like, exceptionally terrible, and they'd been hyping it for a while, they'd give it, like, a 7 and be like, we are so disappointed.
It's such a weird thing, dude. It's crazy.
It was cute, too, because it wasn't even, at that point, it was no longer Nintendo affiliated. Somebody else had bought it. But they were still getting paid off by Ninty. And, like, it was just the most biased piece of shit I'd ever read, and it was hilarious.
Yeah. But, I mean, like, if you want that same kind of thing, you can always just, like, go to Nintendo's site, because I think that they still have companies who are doing that.
Okay, but they don't review their own games on their site. I mean, they're not that bad.
No, but, like, if you go to, like, the DS, like, online shop, and you look through the games that have been, like, released, and they have, like, a star-based rating system...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you know, you'll notice that, like, all the Nintendo games, even if they're pretty mediocre games, have, like, 5 stars, because the only people rating them are, like, people who are, like, super into Nintendo.
Yeah, Nintendo really likes to keep it in the family.
Yeah, they do. It's
crazy.
It's one of those things where having a really, really dedicated fan base has, like... And this circulates a lot of the issues that Nintendo has had for years.
Yeah, they got the Nintendo-year-olds.
Right, where it's literally just people, like, really love their stuff without, you know, any exception, and so they can just continually put out the same stuff and or subpar things.
I mean, arguably every company has that problem, but
yeah.
It is pretty significant with Nintendo.
I know, but I'm saying, like, if a game that is, like, below average for, like, a company that isn't Nintendo comes out, like, if it's not creative or it's just kind of, like, middling, it'll get reviews that are kind of middling or, like, average. You'll get, like, 7s or 8s or 6s, you know, 6, 7s, 8s. You'll see those way more often in another company, whereas, like, a Nintendo game comes out, and as long as the game isn't, like, utter trash,
it'll get a pretty good score.
Yeah, it'll get between, like, an 8 and a 10.
Yeah, I think the only recent Nintendo game that actually, like, did poorly score-wise was Yoshi's New Island. You ever see that shit?
Yeah, isn't that the one on DS?
I haven't even heard of it.
It was like they tried to do a new version of Yoshi's Island, and somehow they just made it, like, extremely bad.
Okay, no, for DS.
Yeah, handheld.
So what I heard about that, and I actually was hearing somebody talk about this the other day, is that after Yoshi's Story, is it Yoshi's Story N64? And which was amazing for the time. Like,
yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Really, really pretty art style, good music, you know, and it did, like, the constraints that were on the system, they did a lot with it. And then they were like, all right, we got to make another one. So they handed it off to this company to do the Game Boy one, and it was awful. Ooh. The Game Boy one was just really bad. There's that really... Is the really famous track from the DS one?
Yeah, it's okay. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, exactly. It's atrocious. The music was real bad.
Right. So the Game Boy one was equally terrible. Wasn't that good. And then when the time came to make the DS one, they handed it to the same developer who did the Game Boy one.
Oh,
and so even though people were like, oh yes, new Yoshi game, everyone's super psyched, they handed it off to the same developers, and it basically just ended up being equally as bad.
That is a legendary bad decision.
Yeah, it's awful. Anyway, so
I wonder what the reasoning was.
I don't know.
Like, no one else wants to work on it.
It's one of those things where there's a lot of decisions Nintendo makes, and it's purely on, not the Japan side, the Japanese side, but, like, kind of, where a lot of the decision making happens there, and then the Nintendo of America kind of gets, and it's happening less, but Nintendo of America kind of has less say in what goes on.
Oh, absolutely. They don't give a shit what the Americans think.
Yeah, it's actually becoming less of a serious thing, and I actually think, despite how far behind Nintendo is in a lot of things, they're starting to make progress, and it's a lot more than a lot of the other companies are doing.
Yeah, vote Goku for Smash.
Vote Goku for Smash. That was actually super cool. Despite the fact that I know that Sakurai was like, it's Sakurai, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going crazy.
He's the Smash Man.
Yeah, I thought so. I sometimes get my names mixed up. Anyway, Sakurai
He's our Smash boy.
He definitely, I think when he put it out, he's like, I don't want to do DLCs, DLC characters. I just want this to be like the last game, basically, and that he does. And then they ended up doing it, and they even announced that it was like partially his idea to do let the people vote for what character they want. I think that was a really good. It's a smart idea on their part, and
fantastic.
It'll be really good as long as they follow through. Basically, how it'll fall short is if they basically had a character in mind and then let people vote, and then just pick the character that they wanted and be like, well...
Yeah, this might be a total disaster. I agree.
Yeah, so there are a few ways that it can fall short and not be the thing that people want it to be. But I think Nintendo's making the right decisions now. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that they do the right thing later, but...
See, what I believe is that there is a chance that Goku could be in Smash, no matter how slim. And we need to vote for him and show him our support, like we did when he released the Spirit Bomb and saved Earth. He's done a lot for this planet, and we need to ask not what Goku can do for me, but what me can do for Goku.
What me can do for Goku.
Okay, back to Nintendo Power for a second.
Right.
There's one compelling reason that I can think of to bring it back.
Okay.
And it's because they reviewed all these really weird third-party games, because they reviewed every game that came out for the systems. And there were a lot of weird games that would make it, and they usually wouldn't get very good scores, but that was like maybe their only chance at selling.
Right.
Like take for example Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 for the original DS, which is a real game that you can still purchase. Like I can't even fathom how it would work, but that was there. Or like the 200 like Party Babies games where you've got those 3D babies and you like dress them up. Like maybe somebody was buying them at Walmart when Nintendo Power was still doing coverage on them, but now they're alone.
It's kind of weird to think that there was a time when Nintendo was actually significantly better at supporting their third-party and second-party companies.
Yeah.
I think it would, if it's a good way to get the third-party and second-party games, get them some hype and some coverage, it's probably, that would be a good way to do it.
Really, just what I'm saying is I want to know about the bad games.
Yeah, well, that too. And I think that trying to hide them, sweep them under the rug, not necessarily a terrible idea, but just because I don't think, giving more hype to bad games is a great thing, but it's always interesting and fun.
Aiden, it's called creating jobs.
That's true. It is called creating jobs. But it's one of those things where it's like, it'd be nice to know about them.
Yeah,
for sure. And they'd be amusing. I think off amusement alone, I think Nintendo Power could probably come back and do fine.
Maybe.
Dude, I would buy Nintendo Power. But I don't actually know, like, that's one of those things where I used to buy game magazines a lot when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would say, like, my middle school age, when I was, like, anywhere between, like, 14 and...
When you were young.
Like 13 to 16 or something along those lines. Which wasn't that long ago now that I think about it, but that was the only time that I would buy those, and I don't really do that anymore. I was like, I don't know what percentage of people actually buy like gaming magazines anymore, if that makes sense.
PC Gamer's still doing pretty well, but like I think they've got decent journalism, so that's probably what's keeping them afloat.
Yeah, you read
and
it for...
I think largely just magazines as a whole and just a subscription-based format like that just doesn't really exist.
That helps keeps
Yeah.
I mean, it
helps
exists,
keep
but
things alive.
it's like not. It would be so hard to keep it going when, like you were saying, you can just find so much of it on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. It's just all
well,
there.
you can find all of it on the internet. It just comes down to availability, I guess.
Right. So it basically, I think, Ari, does that answer your question for the most part? Should we move on to the next one, or?
Absolutely, I would be comfortable with that.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next question. I'm actually torn between two right now, and because Stylus just typed one in that was I think more relevant to the things like to what we were just talking about than the one that I want to ask. So I'm actually gonna ask that one, and that is what do you guys think the distinction between a good and best-selling game is? So how does that happen? Why does that happen? Is that just our opinion? Kind of things like that. And I'm just trying to think of, like, if I just go to the Steam top sellers right now, I'm going to do that as we speak, and look through the games that are on there. Alright, so, in the top sellers, there are a few games that I'm sure people are iffy about. And this is actually... yeah. Anyway,
I have a question for you.
Yes.
How many games in the top sellers right now are zombie games?
Let me look. There is one.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Surprisingly,
it was like 6 last month. So
yeah. The top 10 sellers is one. I went to the next page of top sellers, which is like 1 through 25, and I just want to tell you about a little thing that I see that happens a lot, and this is a personal thing with me, so this is definitely different than other things. But I see 1, 2, 3, 4 survival sim games in the top 25. And so that would be, and 2 of them are zombie games, and 2 of them are water themed.
Water themed.
Yes.
This is new to me. Give me a second. I gotta look at this.
Wait, is
Actually, keep talking.
Just kidding. This one is a horror game. So there's 3 survival horror games, and I noticed that survival horror games are almost always in the top, no matter where you are. Although Subnautica is just like a survival sandbox thing, but survival sandbox is still going strong, I think. And a lot of them, I want to see how many of these survival sandbox games. So there's mixed reviews and is also early access. One second. Early access. Oh, check the third one. Oh, I have to enter my birthday. 1 second. And the third one is early access. So, I think this is a big sticking point for deciding whether or not a game is good or best-selling.
Sorry, I think you mispronounced fucking problem.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on where it's early access games. People are selling their early access games, and they're selling really, really, really well. But for the most part, are unfinished games. Like, I would say they probably have, realistically, like 60% of the content that you would want in a full game, like in a finished game.
Yeah.
And that's just from my experience playing a few with friends. Actually, here's another thing I want to look at. So I don't know if you guys know about this, but there's a recent thing called Steam Curators, which is basically people who review games for a living or play games for a living, put up a short snippet, like a tweet style size, what is that, like a review, right? It's a certain number of characters, I think something like 150 characters, and they just kind of put up a recommendation, like, this is a good game, you should play it for these reasons.
Yeah.
You see a lot of the same people recommending these games, right? So you have people who are really, really big on YouTube. I don't know who Psy Syndicate is, but I'm sure that if I were to find them on YouTube, they would be fairly large. And then PewDiePie, playing H1Z1.
For some reason gets a say.
Right, PewDiePie playing H1Z1, probably, I don't want to make the assumption, but I'm sure that the correlation of him curating the game, / probably Let's Playing the game, is the reason that game might be in the top 10 despite having mixed reviews instead of overwhelmingly positive.
That's true.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think one of the bigger problems... Actually, I've got the shit stick. Silas, you go.
It doesn't matter, he's gone.
Oh, he's gone? Oh my god.
He disappeared,
Right.
He died.
I'll say this.
Right.
One of the bigger problems with early access is less in the unfinished aspect. I think it's reasonable to have somebody pay for your product and then have you finish it later if you're full disclosure about it.
Right.
But often you'll get burnt out on those games before you're finished, and then when they are finished, you won't want to play them. And Besiege is the only exception I've really seen to this.
I like Besiege a lot.
And I mean, even that's not much of an exception because I played it for 2 weeks and I haven't played it in 4. But at least they put a reasonable price on it.
Right.
And the one other problem that I noticed was that Steam recently changed their policy so that early access devs actually have no obligation to finish their game. In the sense that Steam holds no accountability and you won't get a refund if they drop out. And I'm sure there's some kind of sanction placed on them, but still, the user base gets fucked.
Yeah, no, it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's something to be said for playing a game for a little bit and then seeing basically all the content that's in the game at the point, and then getting burnt out on it, and then going back to it and seeing all the content that's in the game when an update comes out, and then just being burnt out on it after that. And that might just be me, but there's something to be said about a game that comes out, has all of the bells and whistles that it wants to have in it, and then you just kind of feel it as an overall experience. Like, it's hard to say that a game would be the same segmented into its pieces than it would be at its whole. Like, if you imagine something, and I know this isn't the kind of game that you often see in early access, but if you played something like Bastion, right? And then like, oh, you can play like the first 3 levels of Bastion. And you're like, okay, cool. And also, the soundtrack isn't there yet, but we have some like placeholder music.
Ooh,
and instead of like, some kind of narrator, you will have instead, subtitles, and we'll add the narrator later.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, by the time the game is finished, you have this fucking awesome game that blows the doors off of like the indie community. But like, if you were to play that game throughout its life cycle, it would have just been like significant. Yeah, it would have been way worse than it would have been when it finished. And I think there's a lot to be said about a game like. Welcome back. There's a lot to be said about a game. I think specifically survival horror games is you see like, oh, we can play a survival horror game, and it doesn't have to be completely finished because for the most part you can just build your base and like walk away from zombies. But there's a bunch of features that they're trying to add, and then like it would be way better if you just started the game out and you had all these sweet as hell features there. I think the game would be a better game overall, and you would have more things that were, I wouldn't say revolutionary, but more interesting and require more forethought than this one is, or like than most of the games that come out in early access are.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I do see a lot of things that come out on early access that are super cool, which is.
Well, and I just want to say that I think it, with early access and alpha and beta even, it kind of depends on the format of the game. Like, not whether or not it's going to happen, but whether or not it's actually necessary.
Right.
I mean, maybe necessary is the wrong word, but whether or not it's actually going to be helpful at all, or whether it's, being used as it was initially intended to be used for.
Right. I think, narrative-driven things would not do so well in early access, and that's why I used Bastion, because it was an easy example, and I apologize. It's a straw man. That's not the way that you want to do things. But like, when you think about the things that are on early access, they're usually games that are not gated in certain aspects. Like, it's not really linear. It's usually open. You kind of do what you want. So you see a lot of sandbox because you can kind of just implement new objects to fiddle with. If you think about a sandbox game as you just playing with the things that are in there, like the different various objects, the way that early access sandbox games is you play around with like 6 little toys, and then like you get bored of it, and then they drop like 2 new toys in there, and you're like, oh, what can I do in combination? Those 2 toys with the 6 toys that I already had, and then you.
It's why Minecraft worked so well. Like,
right.
It's essentially the perfect type of game for early access.
Right.
And I will be back in a minute. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's one of those things that when you, in practice, you do it, it sounds like awesome, but unfortunately, there's a lot of like base steps that need to be done before a game feels like a game. So you have a bunch of survival games that have the same basis are like the same basic things. So you have like maybe 4 or 5 different early access games, but because they're early access and they're all survival sandbox, you know, there's certain things you have to implement first, and then it releases on early access. So you have like 4 or 5 games that are essentially the same exact game in maybe a different setting. Sometimes it's the same setting. And like really the only way to know that you're getting the good one is to be, you know, hanging on to the one that actually updates regularly and has devs that are working on it. You know, people who are going to put the time in to make the game into a full game. And I don't think that's a majority of them. I think there's like 5 or 6 or 7 out at one time, and then you're like, well, I'm basically taking a chance on which one I buy, which one I'm investing my time into, and hoping that it's the one that the people are still working on in like 2 months. Instead of one that gets dropped.
Yeah, and one that actually has... I mean, again, I guess it depends on the format, but maybe not replayability necessarily, depending on the format, but like the ability to be played and be... there's a good word. Like, that it holds up, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I was just... When we were looking at the top sellers list on Steam...
Now I can't hear Silas. Everyone's cutting out. It's not good. I apologize to everybody.
Can you hear me?
Might have to edit this stuff out, but who knows? We might just keep going.
Can you hear me?
Hello. Anyway, so I'm gonna keep talking on the subject because I can't hear anyone else, and it's awkward. That I kind of get.
Hello.
Oh, hey, you're back.
Hey. Hi.
Okay, I can hear you. Continue with what you were saying.
When we were looking at the top sellers list a minute ago on Steam, I noticed that Gary's Mod is up there.
It's still.
It came out in 2006.
Yep.
That's 9 years ago.
It's crazy.
That's insane. When we think of like most games are like, oh yeah, it's so old. It came out in like 2009.
Yeah, go for it.
Because that is old for a game. But like, I realize that Gary's Mod is like much more than
that's
just
fine.
a
I've
game.
got this muted.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. You know, it's still a title, and it's still on the boards 9 years later.
Yeah, and I think that there's something to be said about a game that, and you were talking about infinite replayability and stuff like that, where Gary's Mod, as much as it is a game, is more just like, and it says it right there, is a physics sandbox. But it has all the tools there, and then it has a community-based system where the community can make their own tools and then share them with everybody else. And I think that's a really good way to, if you want to extend the life cycle of a game, especially one that isn't narrative driven, just give the reins to the people who are playing it, right?
Yeah.
If you make a good enough engine to play in and you let people mess around with it, you can have, you know, if someone's like, man, this game is great, but, you know, it could really use, you know, a tool that lets me, you know, shoot my own arms like 300 feet ahead and grab something that, you know, I wouldn't be able to grab initially. Basically what happens is someone goes, yeah, that would be really cool. Should we contact the devs? Now let's just go sit down and make it ourselves and then share it with the rest of the community. And then, like, the good mods get shared. And I think that's a really good step, at least in terms of when I see games come out, having the ability to be in the Steam Workshop and be moddable. And this is fairly recent. It's happening in a lot more games. Is really cool. And we were talking about it with City Skylines, where they're doing more than just adding like superficial textures, but they're actually adding game mechanics and fixing things that they think aren't fantastic. And it's fully supported by the developers, because it's, you know, all things that I wouldn't say need to be in the game, but do better being in the game than not. So when you're wanting something like an early access game, sandbox, I think it does best when the community has like a direct impact on it, as opposed to just waiting and hoping for the rest of the developers to make that change that they want. Oh man. Oh hey, he's back. Welcome back. I just finished my monologue on why I think the modding community is important to sandbox games.
I think it is as well.
So that happened.
I heard a little bit of it.
So I actually think that now that we've discussed / dropped out on this discussion numerous times, we should probably move on to the next one before before I end up repeating myself a bunch.
Did Ari make it back?
Did Ari make it back? He's not back yet. Hopefully he will be, but who knows? Maybe he just disappeared. The question I wanted to ask, and the one that and I know.
Hey boys.
Whoa! Hey, welcome back.
He's back.
Yo.
Whoa! I'm gonna skip all you fools because you guys were gone. I'm gonna ask another question because basically that didn't work out so well.
I'm comfortable with that.
The question I wanted to ask is, what role do AAA games and AAA developers play in the gaming industry? Like right now, what is their current role, and what should their role be? Like ideally, like what do you think that they should be doing?
They are, for the last few years, filling sort of a Walmart type of role, and I feel like they should be more of a Costco.
They should be. I would argue that they're both.
Got me there.
Yeah.
No, I just I feel like they should be driving more innovation, or at least pushing the tech forward.
Yeah.
But they only seem to be doing that with graphics. Like really, only with graphics.
Yep.
And that's not how it should be.
My first instinct was to say that they should, jumping to the second part of the question, that they should like listen to the consumers, but at the same time, I think there are a lot of people who are in. I don't know how to describe it. There are a lot of people that fit in with exactly what they're going for, so that's why they exist, and that's why, that's why the titles come out like they do and as they do, and because it's not like they're not making money, and it's not like every single gamer has the same concept of what they want a game to be and the same idea of what the community should be like and stuff. So, like I said, my knee-jerk reaction is to say that they should pay attention, I guess, and be able to work with what people actually want instead of just kind of releasing the things, like you were saying, that they have all of these, I guess they're not all AAA games, but a lot of them are that fit in these similar genres to each other. And I don't know. I'm contradicting myself. But
yeah, no, I like, and definitely on the same note that Ari was talking about too, is that like it's one of those things, and I was reading a article by Yahtzee, who is the guy who does Zero Punctuation. He doesn't do just videos, he also does like written articles and stuff, and he was talking about Majora's Mask, right? Because they just did the HD remake of it for 3DS. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how it is like way different than your regular Zelda game because the game just doesn't care about you, right? Like the protagonist in the game isn't like celebrated. He isn't noticed by literally anybody else in the game. Like as soon as the days restart, like nobody knows who you are and all the progress you made like disappears. Mm-hmm. And so like not having the main character kind of be the center of the story, but instead have the center of the story be this town full of people, is this like super interesting idea that Nintendo never really went back to or never did something similar to it, where Link just became like the main character, or the focus was still shifted towards him. It was the most innovative because it had to be, essentially. They were like, oh, let's make a 3D game that has so much content, but you have to use the same areas a bunch. Anyway, creativity out of necessity. They never go back to it, and he's like posited the question, could this be made as a AAA game today? And he said that it couldn't, right? It wouldn't appeal to as many people, and so therefore the weird idea that came out of it wouldn't be able to function and prosper well enough to be made into a AAA game today. Instead, it would probably end up being something that you would find in a indie developed game or a Kickstarter game.
I definitely agree, and I think that the time cycle, the time mechanic, although really innovative and fantastic for its time, like, and I'm enjoying the remake. I've been playing the remake. It's been great. Like, really no complaints. But if you view it objectively, it is just another step towards beating the game. Just extra shit you have to do.
Right. But
and
yeah,
that would take away from its appeal today. I don't think you could do it again.
no, I don't think you could do it again. But I think just the idea that they took a risk on it, and did something that wasn't necessarily as formulaic. Because before then, I mean, to be fair, the only Zelda game, 3D Zelda game before that was Majora's Mask, or not Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, right? Every other Zelda game had been like a top-down 2D game, but for the most part, in terms of Ocarina of Time was just kind of like a 3D version of one of the 2D Zelda games, in that a lot of not even that. I think there's a lot to be going into, like, they can go into there, but it is an interesting innovation that they did at the time, and that's the main thing. You don't see that often. A lot of times you're just seeing iterations on previous titles, and you can see this in like basically every console. I don't think you would argue with that. Like, you have Call of Duty games that are basically the same game that comes out once a year, or with slight updates. I'm not gonna want to anchor people. And then same with the NHL games and NFL games, all the EA games. A lot of EA games come out with the same game every year, but it's because they sell.
Yeah.
Right, and no one's really focused on taking an idea and running with it, which is super important. And I've talked about this with, I've talked about this with Ari. I'm fairly certain I've talked about it with Silas. But like, I look at games that could have a ton of potential, like Damned. I really like the idea of Damned. I like to go back to it because I just go, holy shit, if that game had a budget and like not competent, because I think that they have competent developers, but I think that like a larger team that had more experience, that game polished would be amazing. The idea of a horror game that is horror simply based in multiplayer and like fear of a monster, there's so many things that it does right. That if they could polish it, make it look better, and add the technology that a AAA game could give it, it could be a game that is like mind-blowing, right? So like Evolve just came out, and there are a lot of skeptical things about DLC and Evolve, but the game technically, like the way that it looks is awesome. The way that it plays feels really good. Like there's so many, the game is a huge success because it's a AAA title that is kind of weird and different, and like it'd be really nice to see that happen more often, and it just doesn't. Yeah. I think you're going to be seeing more of it, not necessarily AAA, but you're going to be seeing a lot more indie style innovation or like innovative gameplay mechanics on top of what is more comprehensive equipment, like software, such as like better engines to run on, now that like Unreal Engines 3 and 4 are coming out to be purchased at like a decent price for people who aren't professional developers. So you can get people who are not necessarily owned by a huge company or subsidiaries of a huge company able to get a hold of a software, of an engine that they can work in for a price that is like fair. Which is one of those things that to me will make it so that we have more of those really cool ideas on easily playable games so that they can be applied better. Like I think AAA could do such a good job of applying interesting ideas to really fun like feeling and playing mechanics, but like it doesn't exist yet. And it should.
That's fair.
Yeah. Oh, what was the other one? Ubisoft. Ubisoft does this a ton with Assassin's Creed too. Where like,
oh god,
Ubisoft
don't say that name here.
Ubisoft is the biggest game. They're the biggest game company in the world.
Are they?
Yeah, they have. They have more like subsidiary companies than like anybody else. Like there's different Ubisoft headquarters all around the world, and basically what happens is that on any given game, depending on the port, they have a different company working on each different port. So there's always multiple teams working on every single game.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And a lot of really, really cool ideas get kind of thrown under the bus because of it. But in recent years, you had a few, and I noticed that a lot of them are kind of coming from Michel Ancel, the guy who did the Rayman games. He did Beyond Good and Evil.
Oh that guy.
Yeah, so they kind of give him more reign on what he wants and then wants to do with it, and then they can make AAA titles that look really, really nice and play really, really nice. And even though they're not as, like, wildly encompassing as, like, a Assassin's Creed game where the fan base already exists, they're still so good that they get people playing them, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alright, that was my rant that I wanted to go on.
It is an interesting concept when there's, like, I guess fan base, but I feel like it's not even as much that as it is just like advertising that can like draw people in just for the sake of it being that game or that title or that studio or whatever. And that particularly with like we were talking about with Nintendo earlier, how like even bad ones still get good ratings and probably still sell, because especially if it's like a game that maybe from a hardcore gamer's perspective is like not very good, there are still like kids who are like, oh awesome, mom, can I have that? And the mom's like, oh, okay, I don't know anything about it, I'll buy it. And so like it's still
I'm gonna be a gamer dad. I'm gonna stop my kids from buying casual shit. No, I'm sure somebody out there thinks that, and that's terrible of them.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely get what you're saying. There was a question here I wanted to bring up, if that's all right.
Okay.
Actually,
all right,
it's Silas's turn, isn't it? I lost track of the order.
Go ahead, man.
You know what? Just go. Yeah.
Oh. No, now I feel bad. Silas,
No,
I don't
seriously.
have anything particular. Just go ahead.
Yeah, just go with it. I stole someone's question because everyone disappeared for a little while, so don't even worry about it.
Okay, what are some of your favorite soundtracks?
What's your favorite soundtracks?
Was that the one you did?
Yeah, that's one of Silas's as well.
God damn it.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Yeah. Why has there never been an awards show for video games that was good in any regard?
You know what? I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that people think in order to sell video games, you have to like really, really try super hard. And so you end up getting these things that are kind of feel like super cheesy 90s where like video games are awesome and cool, and then people riding on skateboards and, you know, wearing sunglasses all the time. Where like it's actually super common for people to play video games nowadays, so I don't know, necessarily trying to sell them to the people. I mean, it's an award show. People who are going to be watching it play the games anyway, right? So
yeah.
I don't know. Just like being less alien. Stop.
Yeah, I think that like culturally, gaming isn't really accepted as an art form that much. You know what I mean? At least not compared to music or movies or any of the other things like TV shows that get award ceremonies. You know, because like largely people are like, oh, it's a game.
Right.
You know, like it's not a piece of art, a work of art. It's just a game.
Right.
And so even though there are so many things that go into it, and you know there are combinations of so many different kinds of art that go into making a game, just like a movie or a show or anything, those things aren't recognized or even like as a whole like talked about or brought up.
Yeah.
Because it's just a game.
You know, since I asked this question, I remembered Mega 64's award show, which is a satire of all existing award shows, and it is fantastic. It hits all the right notes.
Alright, that's something I haven't seen before. I should probably check out.
I don't think that really counts. But no, because I watched the Spike VGXs one year.
It's so bad.
It was just really terrible. You see whatever that guy's name is, Dorito Pope. Well, I forget his name.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either.
He's there. He just looks empty. You know, it's just kind of a sad awards show for whoever's paid them the most, because you know they don't have any standards. Like, it's not a real awards show. It's a 4-hour advertisement.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I still watch the VGAs, but I mean they're not good. They're biased as fuck.
Right.
like they generally pick some pretty good games, but they're just like very angry and not looking to give like a good review to anything.
Right.
So there's no real point in watching that, you know.
Yeah. I think the question here, Ari, should not be why aren't there any good video game awards shows? It's just like, why don't awards shows work? Like in general.
I don't know. The Oscars are generally pretty good if you like old white men winning awards over and over and over again for decades.
It's sort of, yeah, but like seriously though, when you think about like music awards, TV awards, I mean, to be fair, I think I see this more in like music awards, but the music awards end up going to like. And this is one of those things where I'm like, we just talked about this as being like bestsellers versus being good, and it sounds like a really shitty thing to say, but it's like, you know, a lot of the awards that are going out are just going out to things that sold the best.
Oh,
No,
yeah, of
I don't
course.
think that's a shitty thing to say at all. I don't think anyone. I mean, I hope no one doesn't realize that. You know, because like you just from the viewpoint of the Academy or of the whoever it is that's deciding, which I guess in most cases is just like people, the things that are going to be most common and most popular for being good are going to be they're going to have the most like votes by most people who know them because they sold well,
Right.
because they're famous.
Right.
And they talked about that in the Roundtable podcast when
Now we're stealing podcast stuff? Wow.
yeah, well, no, it's just that concept. And now I'm losing my train of thought. And, oh, wait. Fuck me.
Serves you right, Steeler.
I hate everything.
Yeah, I finally did it. Ari does that to me all the fucking time, and I've never like it's hard for me to do it to other people. Ari, have you noticed that you're really, really good at that?
I do it constantly. And I'll do it to you again in this podcast if you want me to. It's rude, but it's funny.
It's a supernatural ability that he has where I'll be in the middle of like a tangent and or train of thought, and then he'll say like one word and
he'll completely forget it.
Yeah, it'll be derailed.
Yeah.
It's the worst feeling.
I've gotten used to it, but yeah, no, I apologize. I didn't mean to just like steal it from
I don't
you.
think I can do it if I'm trying.
I know. I don't think it's not a thing you do on purpose. It just kind of like happens.
Mhm.
But yeah. On that same note, I don't know. Like, it's hard to be like, oh, the best things don't win because the things that sell the best do. But that's coming from my point of view, where I'm like, this is the thing that I like the best, and why didn't it win? And why didn't other people buy it? And, you know, that could be any number of things, marketing or whatever, but...
I remembered. Go ahead.
it could be marketing or whatever, but also just, you know, my tastes are different, so... Yeah.
So it was when they were having a conversation about people's reactions to like MOBA games and how they were like overwhelmingly positive. They're like,
Oh, yeah!
pretty much all get like I don't remember what it was, like 92%
Of League of Legends games are, like, positively...
are like good. Yeah. And then they what they brought up in the podcast after talking about it for a while, which I think makes a lot of sense, was like that statistics are weird, so that's a kind of a different conversation, but that statistic was probably based off of like
Positive and neutral.
taking the negative reviews and then counting how many players there are and counting all of the people who didn't give any reviews at all as like neutral or positive. Right. And so it's like it's kind of the exact same idea, but the reverse of the award ceremonies. You know what I mean? Because it's like you have all these people, and then all you hear is the money, basically.
All you hear is the money. Yeah, no, seriously. I really like that example too, because being someone who played League of Legends for a while, I can tell you that not 92% of games were not positive.
Yeah.
I like, even if you're on the winning side, at least like 30 to 40% of the time you'd have like a toxic player who just kind of like ruins the whole thing. But you know, And I do believe, I think it was Mathis in that who was like, basically what happened if I had a bad game, I was just like, fuck it, I'm done, and then I quit out, like, as soon as the game ended. Like, I didn't leave a review saying I thought this game was shitty.
In any situation, if
Yeah,
you're at a
no,
restaurant,
seriously.
if you're anywhere, like, the chances that something negative happened and that you heard about it, as, you know, the people who are making it happen,
Right.
are so much less.
Right. I think that also comes with, it's like, yo, when I'm done experiencing having a bad experience with something, basically like not enjoying something I paid money for or spent my time with, either I paid with money or paid with time, like how much of that is like I want to sit here and spend more time in it writing a review telling you why I think it's bad, right? As opposed to just not dealing with it.
And with a lot of like popular things, a lot of, you know, like big corporations or big systems, like it's just so, I mean, there's no way to know this for sure, but every time on any like website, if it's like, oh, contact us with whatever you need, like no matter what pretty much the site is or the business or whatever, I've never felt like if I do this, it's actually gonna make a difference.
Right. Which may or may not be a good mentality, because it is obvious that people sometimes use the statistics.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's me or if that's
right.
like the company. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. And I get it 100%. Oh, okay, so we're slowly inching up on we're done with podcast time. We're very close. And before we leave, since we started with games that we're playing, are there games that you guys are excited for coming out soon or this year, or you're hoping that come out this year? You know, are there games in your head that you're like, man, I can't wait to play that? Go!
I'm still excited for Mother 4. If any of you have heard about that, it's probably pretty close to release now. And I know they've been saying this for, I think, 10 years now. 9 years. But it's a fan-made sequel to Mother 3, and it looks fairly faithful. A lot of people are kind of upset, you know, oh, it's insulting that they took on the Mother name. But as far as fan games go, I don't think I mind it that much, and it looks quite good.
Yeah, I agree. Silas, do you have one? Any particular?
I'm sure there are plenty of things that I would be excited about that I don't actually know about, because I'm so like not in the loop on that kind of thing. But I mean, there are a number of things that I'm excited for just for the sake of them happening, regardless of whether or not it's actually realistic that I'm gonna like be able to buy it or play it or anything like that.
Right.
I think I'm excited / just genuinely curious to see what happens with the Zelda game.
Yep,
and,
me too.
And there's another one that came into my head as well. There are a couple of things that, like, you know, we talked about briefly, Life is Strange. There are more chapters of that coming out.
Right.
And similarly, just the Game of Thrones series with Telltale. Like, I haven't even bought them, but I'm just excited for that series. And there are a number of things like that that, like, they're not realistic that I'm actually going to sit down and do it as of right now.
Oh, but, yeah, no, totally.
There's also a game...
Well.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, you cut out, so I thought you had finished, but keep going.
There's a game that I found somehow on the internet.
And I'll go.
I'm...
The lag is real.
The lag is real. Keep going.
Just keep talking.
It's a game that I found sometime on the internet, and it was successfully kickstarted like 6 months ago or something like that, and it doesn't have a release date as of right now, but it's called Rain World, and it looks super cool. It's like a side-scrolling... Am I cutting out? You guys are giggling.
Yeah, but just keep going.
You're good. Keep going.
God damn it.
It's okay.
It's like a side-scrolling. It's a platformer. I know it has multiplayer. I'm not sure if it's local or online. I think it's local, but basically you're just this little animal that I think they call a cat slug, and you just jump around in this really super interesting and vibrant and kind of like creepy world with these crazy monsters. And I don't even totally know everything about the game yet, but it looks really awesome, and I've been checking up on it, and I'm stoked for that to happen.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. In terms of like episodic things, yeah, I want to get the Telltale Game of Thrones. I played Wolf Among Us. That was super fun. I really need to go through and play The Walking Dead, because that looks, I have it, and I just haven't played it because I'm an idiot. What is it? With the not Tim Schafer, but Double Fine game that is episodic too. They're coming out with the next part of that, and I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, Broken Age.
Broken Age, yeah.
I played the first part and it was pretty good. I really wish they'd done it all at once.
Oh yeah, no, me too.
Because it was a $3.3 million game, yeah. And I would have appreciated not waiting a year.
Aside from the gripes,
to play the second part.
Aside from the gripes, I'm still excited to play the second part of it because it was interesting and engaging.
It was fun.
For me for me to want to go and play the second part. Oh god, there was something else there that I was going to talk about. Enter the Gungeon. Super excited for Enter the Gungeon. And Titan Souls. Obviously, Titan Souls comes out in like less than 2 weeks now, and I'm going to end up doing a series on that, so that'll be fun. But yeah, lots of really, really good titles. I think the Zelda game, I'm really happy that they postponed it because it wasn't up to the standards that they wanted it to be. So I think that's cool that they're willing to put it off as long as it ends up better than they than it would be if they just kind of rushed it out. So that's cool. I'm excited for that as well.
Also, Mirror's Edge 2 is happening, which is cool.
Mirror's Edge, sir, not Mirror's Edge 2. It's a reboot.
Oh, is it
really?
Yeah, it's a reboot of a one series game. Yeah.
Mamma mia.
They're retconning all the story from the first one because it was terrible.
It was real bad.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
The game was great, though.
Yep, it was really good. The mechanics of that game were super solid, and I'm excited to play it again, but with a better story.
All right, can I hit you guys with some old news you may not have heard?
I would if we're really down to like a minute.
Ooh, I thought it was 35 minutes.
No, it was 25.
Oh, bummer. Okay, never mind. Next time.
It's okay. Save it for next time. Write it down on the podcast sheet, and then we'll...
there's no way I could forget this.
Okay. Well, still write it down on the podcast sheet so that we all have it for later, and we can think about it. Anyway, thank you guys all for stopping by and being awesome, wonderful people. I hope you enjoyed the podcast episode. Me and Pyrin do stuff all the time. We're uploading more Pokemon videos. We stream. We do all sorts of like thoughts and impressions videos. That's really cool. Hopefully, we'll see Ari on another one.
I don't even play video games.
He doesn't play video games, but he's good at talking about them. So hopefully, fingers crossed, he'll come up to the next one and join us.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
I'd be down.
Never heard you talk.
Anyway, thank you all for watching. You're all wonderful. You're all wonderful and lovely people, and we'll see you soon.
Peace out.
Ciao.